Imagine parking in the exact same free spot you've used for like 20 years to grab a coffee.
Right, just a totally normal morning routine.
Exactly. Only to receive a $50 invoice in the mail like 2 weeks later.
Wow. From who?
From a tech company hundreds of miles away. But the crazy part is, it's stamped with your own city's logo.
Oh, that is so deceptive.
Right. You didn't see a meter, you didn't see a sign anywhere, but somehow you violated a rule you didn't even know existed.
Which is incredibly frustrating for anyone just trying to go about their day.
Completely. So today we're looking at how a picturesque coastal city accidentally outsourced its local laws.
And really, what happens when the physical rules of our towns are basically replaced by invisible digital algorithms?
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. If you are a learner who wants to understand the invisible mechanics of the world,
The stuff happening right under your tires.
yes, then you are in the exact right place.
Because we are dissecting a real-time municipal collision today.
Oh, collision is a good word for it.
It really is. I mean, this is a masterclass in what happens when infrastructure modernizes, but the social contract with the public is just left completely behind.
Yeah, our mission today is to unpack a glaring systemic lack of communication. So we are heading down to Fernandina Beach, Florida.
Beautiful place.
It is. For those who haven't been, picture a really historic downtown, a vibrant marina.
Lots of tourists.
Oh, heavy tourist traffic on the weekends. And roughly, I think, 39,000 full-time residents.
That sounds about right, yeah.
And right now, they are undergoing a sudden, incredibly confusing transition to paid parking.
To say the least.
Right. And the core conflict we are exploring today is the silent void between the city of Fernandina Beach, its newly selected parking contractor.
A company called One Parking, right?
Yep, One Parking. And the citizens and visitors who are currently just driving in circles trying to understand the rules of the road.
And to map out this void, we aren't just looking at, like, local news clippings or rumor mills.
No, we've got the actual receipts.
We really do. We have a stack of primary source documents that read less like standard local government paperwork and, honestly, more like a corporate thriller.
It's wild how dense these are.
Yeah. So we have the official city legislation, which is Ordinance 2020-513.
Right.
We have the request for proposal, the RFP addendums. And these are incredibly revealing back-and-forth Q&A sessions between the city government and the massive tech vendors who are bidding for the contract.
The Q&A section is always where the truth comes out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And most importantly, we have the comprehensive, unvarnished business proposals from 3 competing parking management heavyweights.
And those were One Parking, Elite Parking Services, and SP Plus. Right?
Exactly. Those 3 gave us the whole playbook.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to
Yeah.
really understand where this communication breakdown peaks, we have to start with where it began.
The Disappearing Act.
Right. Across Fernandina Beach, the standard, familiar green and white 3-hour parking signs just vanished.
Overnight.
Just gone from the streets.
Yeah. Which fundamentally alters the physical landscape of the city,
How so?
Well, we rely on visual civic cues to navigate society. When you remove a sign, you don't just remove a piece of metal.
Right.
You remove the public's understanding of their boundaries. People literally don't know where they stand or park in this case.
Okay, but wait, let me play devil's advocate for the city here for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If you are the city manager, right, and you know you are changing to a fully digital paid system in like 3 months,
Okay.
and people are already currently abusing the 3-hour limit because you don't have enough traffic cops to go out and chalk tires anyway.
Right. The enforcement was weak.
Exactly. So doesn't it save taxpayer money to just pull the signs down now rather than try to police a dying system?
I mean, fiscally, in a total vacuum.
Maybe.
But administratively, it creates absolute chaos. And the vendors bidding on this project knew it immediately.
Yeah, they didn't miss a beat.
No, they didn't. This is where those RFP addendums become totally fascinating. Because when a city puts out an RFP, the vendors use the Q&A period not just to clarify details, right?
What else are they doing?
They are subtly testing the city's strategic competence.
Oh, wow. Like probing for weakness.
Exactly. So one of the vendors notices the missing signs and asks, on the official record, let me quote this.
Yeah, read it.
They say, "We see the 3 hours parking signs all across the city have been removed. Is it the city's intent to introduce incremental rates instead of the 3 hours time limit?"
They're basically asking, did you guys jump the gun, or is this part of some master plan?
Right. And the city's official written response just gives the game away completely.
What did they say?
They reply, and this is a direct quote, "The 3 parking signs were removed because the city has no means to enforce."
Wow. So no master plan.
No, they didn't remove them as a strategic phase 1 rollout. They removed them because they essentially just surrendered to the enforcement problem.
So they threw their hands up and created this massive enforcement vacuum.
Oh, yeah.
But at the exact same time, behind closed doors at City Hall, they are passing Ordinance 2025-13.
Yes, the legal framework.
Right, and this ordinance legally maps out a highly regulated, paid parking area.
Which covers basically all the premium real estate in town.
Exactly. It runs from Ash Street North to Alakwa Street, and from Front Street, including the Marina Lots East, up to 8th Street.
But wait, it doesn't include 8th Street itself.
Right, but it borders it.
Yeah.
So they established the legal framework for a paid zone, but they completely skip the operational framework.
I don't even understand how that works.
Well, when you read the Q&A and the addendums, you see the vendors asking the most basic operational questions. Things like, what will the rates be?
That seems pretty important.
Right, or what are the hours of enforcement? The vendors need these variables to build their revenue share models.
Oh, of course. Because if they're going to split the profits with the city, they need to know how much profit actually exists. Exactly. And do you know what the city replies?
Oh, I'm guessing it wasn't helpful.
The city says the company should provide a recommendation.
Are you kidding?
All of it.
Right.
Rates, hours, annual permits, all of it.
Wow. So the city just drew a legal box around downtown, declared it a paid zone, took down the old signs, and then put out a corporate help wanted ad.
Basically asking private tech companies to please come invent a parking system for them.
That is wild, and it isolates the public completely.
Entirely. Because if a city doesn't know its own rules, it literally cannot communicate those rules to its citizens.
Right, so the city is flying blind, the public is driving blind.
And the contractors are forced to step into this void and build a revenue-generating machine for a population that has absolutely no idea they're about to be monetized.
Which is just a recipe for disaster. Because if the city has created an invisible paid zone with no signs, how on earth is a tourist supposed to know they owe money?
Well, that exact question forced one parking house, who ended up being the winning vendor, to propose a highly aggressive digital enforcement solution.
Okay, let's look at the tech rollout then, because this is where it gets a little dystopian.
What's fascinating here is they completely bypass traditional infrastructure.
Like parking meters.
Right. We aren't talking about installing a parking meter at every space or even those little pay stations on every block.
Okay, so what is one parking solution?
It relies on electric vehicles equipped with license plate recognition or LPR cameras mounted on the roof.
Just driving around scanning?
Exactly.
Yep.
These vehicles will patrol the streets from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, just sweeping the zones and continuously scanning plates.
Wow. I want to stop and look at the mechanics of this for a second, because this is where the listener really needs to understand the shift in municipal power here.
Yeah, it's a huge shift.
Because imagine someone parks in this new invisible zone. They don't see a sign. They don't pay an app. The LPR camera logs their license plate. What actually happens next?
Well,
because they don't get a standard parking ticket, do they?
no, they do not. If you fail to pay, the camera system flags your plate. But you don't receive an official municipal citation from a police officer or a deputized meter maid.
Right.
Instead, you receive what one parking calls a PCN, a parking charge notification.
A shadow ticket.
A shadow ticket is the perfect term for it. The PCN is generated by one parking, the private contractor, and then mailed to the registered owner of the vehicle.
And what's the damage?
The base penalty is $50, escalating to $75 if you ignore it.
But wait, how does a private parking management company based all the way down in West Palm Beach legally get my home address?
Good question.
I mean, how do they mail me a $50 invoice just because they took a picture of my bumper in Fernandina Beach?
Through the DMV.
The Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yes. These modern parking management platforms have sophisticated back-end integrations with state DMV databases.
That feels incredibly invasive.
It does. But because they are operating as an agent of the municipality under this contract, they have the authority to query the DMV database. Yeah, they match the license plate to your vehicle registration, pull your home address, and mail you the invoice directly.
It's less like a parking ticket and more like downloading a free mobile game that suddenly charges your credit card $50.
Right, just because you walked into a premium zone without reading the terms of service.
Exactly. They've basically turned public asphalt into a microtransaction. And it's a private invoice, not a government fine.
And that legal distinction is massive. A municipal citation is a legal instrument.
Meaning there are real consequences if you ignore it.
Right. If you don't pay a real city ticket, the government can suspend your registration or even issue a warrant, depending on the jurisdiction.
But a PCN is different.
Very different. A PCN is just a private corporate invoice for violating the terms of use of a space they manage.
So what happens if you don't pay the PCN?
Well, they generally send it to a private collections agency to hit your credit score. Or they put you on a tow list, so the next time the LPR camera spots your car, you just get booted.
Yikes. And One Parking knows exactly how blurry this line is for the average citizen, don't they?
Oh, they know. In fact, they actively want to blur it further.
Yeah, there is a wild detail in their proposal regarding the actual design of these PCN letters. I have it right here.
Read it, it's unbelievable.
They write, "Note, this is not an official citation, rather, it is a parking charge notice. However, if the city allows us to give formal citations with the city's logo, citation payments made will increase significantly."
They're just openly acknowledging the psychological leverage of state authority.
It's manipulative.
It is. They know that if they send you a corporate invoice from One Parking LLC, you might just throw it in the trash like junk mail.
I probably would, honestly.
Most people would. But if they can slap the official seal of the city of Fernandina Beach at the top of that private invoice, compliance skyrockets.
Because people fear the government.
Exactly. They pay government-looking documents without asking questions.
Imagine the whiplash for the citizen here. No physical signs on the street, no physical kiosks to put a quarter in.
Just silence.
Yeah, and then you just get a scary government-stamped letter demanding $50 a few weeks later. Which brings up another point. Why are there no physical kiosks?
Well, because the vendors actively discourage them.
Really? Why?
Because One Parking's proposal notes that 98% of the U.S. population has a cell phone.
So they assume everyone can just pay digitally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their immediate recommendation is a completely digital, app-based, or QR code payment system.
But what's wrong with a kiosk?
They argue kiosks are expensive to maintain, they break down constantly, and they require physical cash collection, which eats into profits.
But if everything is digital and there are absolutely no signs, how do people know what the parking actually costs?
Well, that transitions us into looking at the proposals themselves, because remember, the city didn't set a price.
Right. They asked the vendors to just guess.
Essentially, yes. So the three competing vendors, One Parking, Elite, and SP Plus, each had to pitch their own corporate philosophy on what Fernandina Beach asphalt is worth.
And the spread between these proposals is shocking.
It really reveals entirely different business models within the privatization industry. Like SP Plus came in with a volume-based, low-cost approach.
What was their number?
They proposed just $1 per hour with a $10 daily maximum. Their philosophy is low friction, high turnover.
Okay, that seems somewhat reasonable, but then you have One Parking, the winner.
Right, sitting right in the middle.
They suggested $3 per hour with absolutely no maximum time limit.
None at all.
So if you park for an 8-hour workday, you are paying $24 every day.
And finally, you had Elite Parking Services taking a premium tier approach.
What did they want to charge?
They recommended $5 per hour with a $15 daily max. Elite was essentially treating Fernandina Beach like a major metropolitan downtown.
If I'm a local resident looking at this, my head is absolutely spinning. We go from free parking to a private company demanding $3 an hour.
And it's not even just $3, is it?
Oh, right, because the RFP documentation reveals some hidden costs to this digital-only system.
You referring to the transaction fees?
Yes. Because the city is opting for an app-based payment system, there is a literal toll road just to process the payment.
The documents show an 87-cent service provider fee added to every transaction.
Meaning if SP Plus had won and charged $1 an hour and I stopped for a 1-hour lunch.
Okay, doing the math.
I'm paying $1 for the space and 87 cents just for the privilege of using the app to pay for the space.
It's outrageous.
Nearly half my cost is a digital convenience fee that I am legally mandated to pay because they refuse to take my quarters.
And that 87 cents doesn't build roads or fix potholes in Fernandina Beach, by the way.
Oh, of course not. Where does it go?
That fee goes straight to the software provider processing the credit card. It extracts capital directly out of the local economy and sends it to a tech platform in another state.
That is incredibly frustrating. But the pricing confusion doesn't stop there.
No, it gets worse.
The base rates and the app fees are one thing, But we really have to look closely at the actual text of Ordinance 2025-13.
Oh, the dynamic pricing clause.
Yes, because there is a clause in there that introduces a concept that should terrify literally any consumer.
Let me pull it up. Ah, Section 78-105 of the ordinance.
Go ahead and read it.
It states, the city manager may set dynamic pricing within the fee range set by the city's master fee schedule for no more than a 30-day period.
Dynamic pricing. We are talking about Uber surge pricing, but applied to public parking spots.
This raises an important question. How do you implement dynamic pricing in a physical environment that lacks physical communication tools?
You don't. At least not well.
I mean, the theory behind dynamic pricing is demand management, right?
Right. If it's a busy Saturday during a local festival, the algorithm detects high occupancy.
And then it automatically surges the price of parking from $3 to, say, $5 an hour.
And the economic goal there is to force price-sensitive people to park further away, keeping premium spots open for those willing to pay the surge.
Which works in theory.
But demand management only works if the consumer actually knows the price has changed before they consume the product.
Exactly.
If I open my Uber app after a concert, I see the ride home is $80 instead of $20, and I can choose to take the bus instead.
You have the information up front.
Right. But if I pull into a parking spot in Fernandina Beach, and there is no digital billboard telling me the current rate,
Because there are no signs.
and I have to park, get out of my car, find a street lamp with a QR code on it, scan it, and wait for a website to load just to find out if I can afford to park there today.
It's absurd.
Isn't that a catastrophic failure of user experience?
It creates a tremendous amount of friction. And
Eh.
beyond just being annoying, it systematically alienates massive portions of the population.
Like who?
Well, what happens to the elderly driver who doesn't have a smartphone?
Right. They literally can't pay.
Or what happens to the tourist on an international data plan who can't get the QR link to load properly?
They just get slapped with a $50 shadow ticket.
Exactly. This city is effectively saying that if you cannot interface with our fluctuating digital marketplace, you are simply not welcome in the downtown core.
Wow. And I would argue that the vendors know this system is fundamentally hostile.
Though they definitely know.
When you read through the proposals, they aren't just pitching LPR cameras and apps. They are heavily pitching crisis public relations.
Which is so telling. They looked at the city's lack of communication, they looked at the missing signs, and they realized they were walking into a massive public relations minefield.
They saw the writing on the wall, even if the signs were gone.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The business of parking enforcement is increasingly just the business of behavioral engineering and damage control.
Okay, let's look at Elite Parking Services proposal for a second.
Yeah, they dedicated an entire section to a risk mitigation plan.
And they aren't mitigating software bugs, are they?
No, they are mitigating human anger. The very first risk they identify in their chart is public backlash on paid parking.
They know the residents are going to revolt. So what is their proposed solution to stop the pitchforks?
Elite proposes hosting town halls and offering a 30-day education period before the shadow ticketing actually begins.
Education period.
Yeah, and they actually include a really fascinating case study in their proposal to prove to the city that this backlash is inevitable.
What's the case study?
They cite a 2011 program called SF Park out in San Francisco. It was one of the earliest municipal attempts to manage parking demand through dynamic pricing.
San Francisco. I mean, comparing Fernandina Beach to San Francisco is a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
Demographically, yes.
All right.
But the human psychology is exactly the same.
How so?
Well, Elite included the SF Park case study to show that at launch, local business owners and residents are uniformly terrified.
Right, because change is scary.
Business owners think surge pricing will completely kill foot traffic, and residents think they're being priced out of their own neighborhoods.
Which are valid fears.
Completely. And Elite's main takeaway from San Francisco was that a city can only survive this initial backlash through massive, transparent communication.
Like proactively sharing objectives and explaining the algorithm to the public.
Right, and having dedicated outreach teams walking the streets, answering questions.
But San Francisco did that before they flipped the switch.
Exactly.
Fernandina Beach just took down the signs in the dark and then asked a vendor to come in and do the PR cleanup after the fact.
And you see that exact cleanup strategy in One Parking's winning proposal, too.
Yeah, they pitched what I like to call the friendly reminder campaign.
Right, because One Parking understands that you cannot just start mailing $50 LPR invoices to tourists who think parking is still free.
The political fallout for the city council would be terminal. They'd all be voted out.
Absolutely. So One Parking suggests a 30 to 60-day grace period.
Okay, and what happens during this grace period?
During this window, their enforcement ambassadors don't actually issue PCNs. Instead, they walk the streets and slip physical notes under windshield wipers.
The exact wording of this note is a masterclass in passive-aggressive corporate speak.
Oh, read it. I love this part.
It reads, Fernandina Beach Parking Enforcement would like to remind you that parking is no longer free in the enforcement zone. We appreciate your visit and ask that on your next trip, please remember to pay for your parking or you may receive a parking citation.
It's a soft launch. It's totally designed to just train the public.
But consider the burden of communication here.
Right.
The city of Fernandina Beach has completely abdicated its responsibility to inform the public of municipal law.
Which is a fundamental duty of local government. They're supposed to communicate new taxes, fees, and regulations.
Instead, Elite Parking is proposing outreach street teams, and One Parking is slipping flyers under wipers.
The government has basically outsourced its own voice.
And nowhere is this silence more deafening than with the actual residents of Fernandina Beach.
Oh, the resident permit situation. This is a mess.
It really is. We mentioned earlier there are about 39,000 people living there full-time, and the city promised them a break. Under the new ordinance, residents are supposed to be eligible for digital permits that grant them free or heavily discounted parking.
Which sounds great on paper, honestly.
Sure, but logistically, it is a nightmare.
Because the system relies entirely on license plate recognition cameras, there are no physical resident decals.
So I don't get a sticker for my bumper that says local anymore.
Nope. Your license plate is your permit. The LPR camera reads it, checks a database, and says, okay, this plate belonged to a resident. Do not issue a PCN.
But how does a resident get their plate into that database in the first place?
That's the kicker. The city has no automated mechanism for it.
So every single one of those 39,000 residents has to somehow discover that this new system even exists.
Yep.
Then they have to navigate to a third-party website or download some private app they've never heard of.
Correct.
And then upload their vehicle registration or maybe a utility bill to prove they live within the city limits?
Yes, they have to actively surrender their data to a private tech vendor.
All without the city ever formally briefing them on why they need to do this or guaranteeing how that third-party vendor will protect their data.
It's astonishing. The contractors are left to basically market a mandatory digital registration system to an entire population.
A population that is blissfully unaware that the ground rules of their own downtown just changed overnight.
Just think about the resident who misses the memo.
It's like a senior citizen who doesn't follow the city's Facebook page.
Exactly. They drive downtown to go to the pharmacy. They park in the exact same spot they've used since 1995.
And there are no signs telling them it's a paid zone now.
None. They don't have a smartphone to scan a QR code they didn't even know they were supposed to be looking for.
And then 2 weeks later, a private company pulls their address from the DMV and mails them a $50 invoice.
With their own city's logo stamped right on it.
It is the ultimate breakdown of the social contract.
It really is. I mean, a municipality's power fundamentally derives from the consent and understanding of the governed. When you abstract the law away from the physical environment and bury it in digital infrastructure like this, you don't actually achieve compliance. You just generate friction and deep resentment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, I mean, Fernandina Beach didn't set out to be a villain here.
No, not at all.
They recognized a completely standard municipal need. They needed revenue to maintain the infrastructure.
Potholes aren't free to fix.
Right. And they needed to force parking turnover so tourists wouldn't just clog the marina spots all day long, locking out other shoppers.
The policy goal itself is completely sound. The execution is the failure.
How would you summarize that failure?
They drafted an ordinance and hired a highly sophisticated technological hammer, but they entirely forgot to warn the nails.
That's a great way to put it.
They removed the physical signs, which was the only communication tool they had, created a legal void, filled it with immense confusion, and are now entirely dependent on private companies issuing shadow tickets.
And relying on outsourced street teams to do the fundamental public relations work of a democratic government.
It's incredible how a stack of dry municipal RFPs and vendor proposals can reveal so much about the way our world is quietly shifting.
It really is. Well, To our listener, the learner, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope this pulled back the curtain on how the invisible gears of city management actually turn.
And just how much money is exchanging hands in the shadows of those missing parking signs.
It's a stark reminder that infrastructure is never just about concrete and asphalt. It is always, fundamentally, about communication.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay, what is it?
If you are listening to this and thinking, well, I don't live in Florida, so who cares? Take a closer look at your own downtown.
Oh, absolutely. This is happening everywhere.
Because the exact same LPR technology, the exact same revenue share agreements, and the same shadow ticketing frameworks proposed in Fernandina Beach are sweeping across the country right now. As our cities become smarter and municipal enforcement is increasingly handed over to algorithms optimized for profit, who ultimately owns the relationship with the citizen?
That is the big question.
When you get a parking ticket in the mail, or a dynamic surge charge pops up on your phone, are you actually interacting with your elected local government?
Or are you just another microtransaction in a private company's portfolio?
When the signs disappear, whose rules are you really following?